Hi everybody. So today we are on part 5 of our Faith, Hope, Love Quiltalong. So we've done our faith block. Well, first of all, we picked out our colors, right? Part 2 we did our faith block. Part 3 we've done our OP block. And part 4 we've done our love block. The faith block and the love block are actually very well designed for just being a small table topper, maybe a little patchwork wall hanging to be placed over top of a door or something like that. They're just very nice, just even on their own. But as part of this quilt, then we actually have faith, hope, love, and so the OP is actually a separate block that we did, but you could easily take the H and the E out and make hope into a pattern as well for a wall hanging. So anyhow, we finished our faith, our OP, our love block. Now we're working on our pumpkin block. So there's a lot to unpack here. So I'm gonna stop a few times and work on a few pieces that are in this block. So first of all, first thing I need to tell you is that I need to apologize because I actually should have added a third row to the OP block. It didn't necessarily have to be, but it would be easier if it was. And actually, hang on just a second, I need to take my headphones out. I wondered why I was so quiet. I've been listening to a podcast, so anyhow. So it would be simpler if I had just added this row onto the OP, but I didn't, and it's fine. You can either add it on now, or you could add it on to the pumpkin block and then just sew it to the OP. That's fine. I think what I'm gonna go ahead and do though is go ahead and sew this into a strip and sew it onto the OP, and I'll set that back aside here on my board. And then what I'm gonna do is I've actually picked, so we need 3 rows, 7 long, or 3 columns, 7 rows. And so I'm gonna make that into a block. Picked 3 columns, 7 rows. I'm gonna sew all that together and have one block already ready to attach to my pumpkin. So then what I will need to do is actually sew, trying to remember, 9 blocks together, 2.5-inch blocks for this particular pattern, or you could use 5-inch blocks. It's gonna give you the same dimension. You know, you're gonna have the same effect. You're just gonna have a different size quilt, and it will be a large one, but it won't be too terribly irregular. I actually made one for my cousins for their wedding, and I always called it like a couch quilt. Like it was slightly, because it's slightly more wide than it is long. It actually is nice for snuggling up on a cool day, and you know, the two of you watching a movie, that sort of thing. So anyhow, so yeah, I'm gonna sew that into a block. I'm gonna sew this strip onto the OP, and then I'm gonna sew this strip right here. And I am actually, in my particular case, going to sew my strip and then check it against these points to make sure it's matching up. So I actually have run into a problem that I'm gonna have to kind of work on. These are 2.5-inch squares, both of them. However, the white is almost closer to 2 3/4. It's not quite 2 3/4, but it's just a hair scant. And then the 2.5-inch blocks that I used are actually pinked. And so for my sewing machine, my 1/4-inch foot, it made them just a little bit long. So like when you sewed the seams here, this is not really a 2-inch block now, because you should have a 1/4-inch seam on each. It's actually more like 2 1/8. And so I just need to make sure it should be just fine, because I'm using the same foot. So it should come out just fine to match up with these right here. But I just like to double check. So that's how I'm gonna do that. Sew this strip to this block, sew the 3 columns of 7 rows together, and then I will actually sew this strip and check it against that block. And then what I will do, I am actually going to, so there's a couple different ways that you could do your actual pumpkin here. What I've opted to do is to take a block, and what I will do when I get the strip sewed is actually make sure that I have the exact correct width on this block and the correct length with the block here. So I may have to cut this down just a little bit more, but I just kind of temporarily cut it down so you can see. But I will cut that down to match the strip in the block here. And then what I will actually do is sew on triangles, and I've kind of folded them here so that you can see it's basically going to be a seam right here. It is very uniform still, which is kind of what I was wanting to go for with this particular quilt. Let me show you my other one that I had originally showed you in part 1. But I had actually done pumpkin where I just, the smaller pumpkin I appliqued on. The larger pumpkin I actually sewed into a block, and I just kind of didn't really measure. I just kind of laid down a piece of fabric and just sewed from right here to right here. It wasn't even really a point that I'd picked out, just kind of sewed it. And so the thing that I kind of didn't necessarily like about that is that my main pumpkin came out so rectangular. I would like it to be just a little bit more roundish, or squarish, I guess is the word that I want to use. And so I have actually measured these as 5-inch blocks, and I'm going to sew them diagonally, and then they'll be uniform on the corners. That was kind of what I wanted to go for this time. I don't mind the other one. It just is a little bit too artsy craftsy for me, but I still use it. I still like it, so there you go. Let's see. So then once I have this block sewn, I'll have this strip sewn, and I will sew it onto the pumpkin block here, sew that all together, sew the OP on, and what I will do then is sew this section, middle section, onto the faith, and then onto the love. And then I will have my top complete, and I will actually go in here and I'm going to put a little kind of a curly Q pumpkin stem. My other ones weren't, they were just more straight, and I'd like to try to go for more of a curly Q applique onto the quilt top. So, and this background right, or this fabric right here, is actually what I'm going to use for my backing. So I've got that here, and that's what I'm going to put on the back of this quilt. So that'll be actually in the next video. And I think don't quote me on this, you won't know till the next episode, but I think what I'm going to do is actually make that backing oversized so that I can front it on the top of the quilt, and that'll be my binding then as well. And I think that'll kind of pull it together, because this is not really a fabric that's in the same fabric line. In fact, neither of these is, but I think they're going to blend well enough for what I want to do. They are a little bit more, this is a little bit more yellowy than what, this is more mustard and tans, and this has a bit more yellow into it, but I think it goes well with the pumpkin block. So a couple things that you could do, if you didn't want to necessarily do the pumpkin this way, you could actually just do just a square in here sewn onto your 3 rows of 3 columns. I have such trouble with that. 3 columns of 7 rows and your OP block. So you could just sew just a regular rectangle, because it is more rectangular, in here, and then actually applique on a pumpkin. Or I even thought about just sewing in the square here and then quilting in a pumpkin you know, like you quilt all around it with something more smaller, more decorative, feathers maybe, or maybe you have like a vine. I don't know why I thought feathers. A vine with pumpkin leaves, that sort of thing. And then you could actually just come in here and literally quilt a pumpkin into it, or embroider. I think that would be better. Myself, I don't know. I had actually even thought about doing some decorative stitching in here. Maybe maybe I would choose a more green block that kind of went with my other, well, you're gonna have different colors than what I have, but I might choose something that blended more with my other colors, and then actually do an orange stitching on it. I think that would be kind of neat. I would really love to see what you all come up with, because I know there's so many other things that I could do, and so many other things that you all will do. My other thought was, this all together is, how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I believe from here, so we did the OP block already. So if you don't add this row onto your OP, if you include it in here, you actually have 13 columns. You could go ahead and add this onto the OP and then make it a block of 12 by 7. That's kind of odd, so you could do the row up here and the row here on the OP, and then you would actually have 12 by 6, and you could separate that into 2 different blocks if you'd like to. Yeah, actually you could do where you have a block here and then you just have a row in between. So instead of having this one here, you do like a 6 by 6 block, and then a row of colors, and then a 6 by 6 block. Because I had that thought too of doing like a maybe a maple leaf too. Maple leaf and a pumpkin here, or you know, maybe a couple carpenter stars, something along that line. A churn block, all kinds of different ideas. But what I'm gonna go with is actually sewing this strip onto the OP, sewing this together as a block, sewing this together as a row, and trying to make sure that my points match up, and then I will actually cut the pumpkin to what this length of this strip is, and then I'm gonna actually sew the 5-inch squares onto the pumpkin, and then I will literally sew the OP, pumpkin, and the block here, and then I'll sew all 3 parts together. All right, so I'm going to bring you back. You know what? I will show you maybe a little bit of the sewing, but I'm basically probably going to bring you back when I get to the actual pumpkin part. So I made another boo-boo, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, another boo-boo, but I think it's gonna be okay. So I just went ahead and I'll show you what I did. So I got my 3 columns of 7 rows stitched together. I did stitch my other row on here, and I just attached it to my OP block first. Then I stitched together my top row here, and then I stitched on my pumpkin, and I did my corners at exactly the same size. The problem is I'd forgotten to measure my cloth that I had put up here to the length on this block. So it was a little bit long, but I just decided when I started to sew this block onto this, that's when I realized this block was probably about yay long instead. And I thought, you know what, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it being a little bit wider at the base than it is at the top. It's still going to be kind of rectangle, very similar to what my other sample quilt was, but I'm okay with it this year. I actually have a couple of pumpkins growing out there that are very odd shaped, and this kind of reminds me of one, so I'm gonna just stick with that. I still need to sew my faith block to my OP and pumpkin block, and then I still have to do the stitching in here in the center. And next I'm going to actually figure out which one of these I want to use for the pumpkin stem. Pretty sure it's going to be this. I actually have to stitch two of them together, but I'm fairly certain that I'm going to use this material here for the pumpkin stem. And all you need to do is sew your fabric. There's different ways that you can do applique, so you guys do whatever you like. I'm gonna actually use Lori Holt's method. I've got her, I can't think what it's called. Anyhow, I'm gonna stitch together the two fabrics here, and then stitch on the thing that I can't think what it's called, and then reverse it and applique it down. So I had kind of thought maybe these two, but I don't really like either one of them. I think this one, it blends while it also kind of pops. So I think that's what I'm gonna go with. All right, so I will do that and bring you back and show you my finished top. So there's my quilt top already. I went ahead and appliqued on the pumpkin stem, and so now we're all ready for getting the backing together next week and getting it quilted. Can't wait to see what kind of ideas you all come up with, maybe with same pattern but different colors, maybe a different block in the center. I might even do another pumpkin applique in the center there. I'm not 100% sure. Might do just do quilting. I was kind of thinking like 4 hearts, like right side up heart, upside down heart, and then 2 on the side, like in a 4 kind of clover. So I might leave the top just like this, and then maybe do something interesting when I quilt it. So, but otherwise it's kind of a big open space, big orangey space right there for a pumpkin, and it should be a pumpkin, but because I'm dumb and didn't mark knew that was gonna happen. All right, well, we'll find out eventually. So yeah, we'll see what happens with it now. Yep, I may just go ahead and kind of push it back. So this is the edge of the garden right here. Actually, this is rototilled part right here, and this is grass that's grown up into the garden. So I may just set her right here and see what happens, if it rots now or if it will dry out. We'll find out. Stay tuned for a future posting.